when we are talking about the Springmath topic of calculating missing value in percent problem. Obviously, we have different types of problems. This one, we're missing the whole number part, what we're trying to find the percent of. In this situation, we're missing the percentage. Down here, we know the percent of what, but we're missing the final answer there. So there's not really one precise procedure to use for each and every problem. They're all slightly different, but they can all be approached similarly. And I think the most effective way to do this is to know that percent literally means out of 100. If we think about the word percent, out of, and then cent is 100. 100 years in a century, 100 cents in a dollar, so on and so forth. So my approach would be to change these percentages into fractions. In this context, of implies multiplication. So we would say 30% times this number equals 87. Blank percent times 400 equals 80, and so on and so forth. So I would keep that in mind as well. Also, we're going to get into a point where we're going to be dividing by fractions. So if we're going to be changing the percentages to fractions, we got to know how to manipulate the equations with the fractions. So if we have to divide something by a fraction, it's going to be the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. So when we look at the first one, I would think of this as 30 over 100, which I'm going to go ahead and simplify that to 3/10. We can just eliminate one of those zeros, times whatever number we're dealing with equals 87. So if we want to figure out what n is, we would have to divide by 3/10, or like we said, multiply by the reciprocal. It's going to be a little bit easier to do it that way. So that'll get us n by itself, and then we just have to simplify what we have over here. The nice thing about when working with fractions, anything in the numerator can be simplified with anything in the denominator. So we figure out, like, is 87 divisible by 3? And the quick trick, 8 plus 7 is 15. 15 is divisible by 3, so we know it is. We just have to figure out what it is. If you can't do the math in your head and realize that it's going to be 29, you can do it this way. 3 goes into 8 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. We have 27 left over. We get 29. So this will turn into 29. And then 10 times 29 is 290. So 30% of 290 is 87. Here we don't know the percent. All right, so we're kind of thinking, okay, n over 100 times 400 equals 80. When I look at this, same idea with fractions, like where we could cross off some zeros or anything in the numerator and denominator. I'm going to cross off both of these, have 2 zeros. So it really is 4n equals 80, and I would just divide by 4. So n would equal 20. So 20% of 400 is 80. Same idea here. I'm going to think of 58 over 100. And if I want to simplify this, I can. I don't necessarily have to, but I know both of these are even, so we can divide by 2. So I could have 29 over 50. And to get rid of that fraction, multiply by the reciprocal. And what's nice, 29s cancel each other out, so we know that n is going to be 50. So 58% of 50 is 29. Likewise, we got another percent, so I'm going to think of this as 85 over 100. Both of these are divisible by 5 because they end in 5 or 0. So I'm going to think of 100 divided by 5 is 20, 85 divided by 5. And the way I think of this is 10 5s get me to 50. I have 35 left, so I have 17 left over. So 17 times n equals 68. Another multiplied by the reciprocal type of problem. And now I'm going to see if this simplifies. 68 divided by 17. 17 actually goes into 68 4 times. So I'm going to multiply. That turns into 4. 20 times 4 is 80. So 85% of 80 is 68. This one, we finally have where we're trying to find the answer by itself on the other side of the equation. We can do the same thing here. 50% is 50 over 100. That would simplify to 1/2. So we're basically just thinking, what is half of 10 and 1/2 times 10? That's 5. And we got one problem left on here. We might as well finish it up. We don't know what this is, but same idea. I'm going to think it's something over 100. And I can think of this. I got a 0. That can cancel out, so it's 12 over 10. Well, 12 over 10 is the same thing as 6/5. So when I multiply by the reciprocal, 6 goes into 36. 6 even times, 5 times 6 is 30. All right. I think fractions is the most effective way to go about this. So remembering fractions literally means out of 100. So anytime you're dealing with I said fractions. Percents literally mean out of 100. So anytime you're dealing with percents, use fractions. There are methods where we can change the percents into decimals. So we could say 0.3 times n equals 87. But then we would have to divide by 0.3. And I feel like working with fractions is easier than dividing with decimals. Doable, but like I said, fractions a little bit easier, so that's what I would stick with.